morning. As most of you can tell, my name is Wayne Thomas. For those that can't read, it's still Wayne Thomas. I just have a bunch of first names. I'll be your guest speaker today. I wanted to introduce myself a little bit before I go on too far. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I served from 2004 to 2009, spending most of that time on board a submarine. Has anyone ever been on a submarine before? Oh, there are two of us today. Now I'm a teacher at a high school where I teach mostly juniors and seniors with business classes, which is vastly different from going 700 feet underwater. I worked really hard a long time ago to get out of school, and I barely made it, and now I'm back. I'm here with my beautiful wife in the back there in the pink sweater, and our two boys. I met my wife 11 years ago. I married her 11 years ago. But I met her as soon as I came home from the Navy, which was about 13 years ago. With her is my 9-year-old son, Wrigley. He's the one that you can't see because he's cowering. He's named after the business owner who had bought the Cubs at one time. Next to her is Walter, who is also going to be hiding now because I said his name. And he's 4. He's named after her grandfather who served in World War II. I am a lay pastor out in Community Brethren in Mishawaka, which is a church about the same size congregation as we have here today. And I started preaching there really before I left for the Navy. I offered my first sermon right before I went to boot camp. It lasted about 5 minutes. Since there's no Cubs game going on today that I really care about anymore, I can go a lot longer than 5 minutes. But as a parent, it really kind of strikes me how now I'm responsible for these little human beings. A little human looks up to me. They need you, right? All the time. All the time. They need you. And they follow your every move. Whatever it is they see you doing, wherever you're going, they try to do about the same thing. And most of the time, they need their mom. But on a rare occasion, one of them will look up and they'll say, "I need you, Dad." And in those fleeting moments, those brief moments that come along, my heart swells because now they want me. They need me for something. I'm going to read from Proverbs chapter 3 today. Verses 5 and 6, probably as we start reading, will be pretty familiar to most of you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Would you pray with me, please? Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for this message that is about to be given. May we use it to learn to trust in you and to lean on you with all of our being. May we begin to acknowledge your presence more and more and see how you make our path straight. In your name, amen. A few weeks ago, we went to the 4-H fair out in St. Joe County. And like a lot of 4-H fairs, they had animals to look at. They had the vendors that were selling all of their homemade knickknacks. They had fried everything, candy bars, ice cream, anything that you would want fried, they can do that. And they even had carnival rides. And I suppose somewhere along the way, they had stuff that kids could enjoy too. I enjoy taking my boys on those overpriced rides. This year was especially memorable because at one point, Walter and I got to go on a ride together. See, Walter was actually scared to go on the ride. He wanted to do it, but not by himself. He needed me for just a second. And he grabbed my hand, and we walked up to the ride, and I helped him get into a seat, and I strapped his belt on him, and I showed him it was secure, and then I sat next to him. And by the end of the ride, he'd had so much fun, he wanted to do it again by himself. I believe that our God is sovereign. Our God is omnipotent. And I also believe that he has an incredible sense of humor. His sense of humor is just sarcastic enough that he can place the most inconspicuous teachers in the life of a teacher. He can give you someone like a 4-year-old little boy to teach you more about what it is to be a Christian. I'm supposed to be raising my young sons to be strong, biblical believing men. And when I pray at night, that is my prayer. My prayer is that my boys will be of strong mind and strong body and strong spirit. But in the end, I really believe that they are helping me to grow. If any of the other parents in here kind of notice the same thing throughout your life, it's your children that really help us grow up, and hopefully they can forgive me for it someday. But what does all of this really have to do with trust? I have another story. I try not to tell too many stories about Wrigley when I preach now, because he's old enough to actually get embarrassed and tell me later. Walter will forget about it by the time we get home. Hopefully this is another one that parents can kind of look to and recall and reflect on a little bit personally as well. On occasion, I will pick my boys up when they fall asleep. And it sounds like a really cruel prank, but they would fall asleep on the couch in the living room. And I know I can't leave them there all night because they'll fall off the couch. So I would pick them up and take them to their bed. Other times when I go to work early in the morning, Walter would fall asleep in his car seat. And when I would take him into my in-laws' house, his babysitters, I have to pick him up and he's asleep. And I carry him into there. And once in a while, Walter will just barely peek his eyes open, and he'll look up at me, and he lays his head down on my shoulder, and he falls back asleep. He doesn't question my motives. He doesn't ask, where are we going? He just allows me to pick him up wherever he is and take him to another place. And he doesn't even wrap his arms around me. He just sits in my arms and falls back to sleep. And all of his weight is right there in my arms. Not impressive. He weighs 32 pounds. It's harder to pick Wrigley up at this point. But I get to pick him up and carry him to wherever we're going. And he trusts me to do that. And there are some key elements there. Walter, when I pick him up, he doesn't argue with me. He doesn't question me about where we're going or how we're getting there or what the plan is. He just sits in my arms. And he takes rest, falling back asleep from the time it takes me to get from the car through the front door of his grandparents' house. He's asleep. And he allows me to carry all of his weight in my arms, not trying to support himself at all, completely trusting me. And it's the epitome of trust that Walter has for his parents that allows this to happen. Let's look again at the word from Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. He doesn't question me. In a few years he will, but for now, he doesn't question me. He simply trusts. Noah Webster defines trust as firm belief in the character, strength, or truth of someone or something. Walter doesn't interrogate me because he believes in the character of the one carrying him. He believes in the character of his father as I carry him to where we're going. Some of the kids up there were praying for the new year, for the school year that's coming about. And that's kind of what this whole message was predicated on. For me, my summer vacation's ending. And I know I need to trust someone because the past few years of teaching has been really rough, as it has been for most any career. And as I enter that new school year, I think it rests on the heart of all of us to know that God carries us. We want to lean on him. But do we really trust where it is that he wants to take us? Or do we start to interrogate him? But God, it starts, right? But God. Can I really afford whatever this move is that I'm supposed to be making? But God, how often will I see my friends or my family? What about my girlfriend or my other significant others? My cats, my dog? What about my waistline or the baseball season? And all of these questions start coming up because I've got all of these things I'm concerned with. These temporary things in my life that are important right now. Do I really want to give that up for this eternal plan that you have? Do I really trust you? Hundreds of questions we throw at the one that we're supposed to be trusting. There's an illustration people like to use with their relationship with God. It's like giving him the steering wheel in their life. And I don't know if I personally like that illustration. I know it really works for some people. Does anyone ride a motorcycle? Because it doesn't work for them. There's no steering wheel. I just feel it devalues our responsibility in our lives if we say that God has the steering wheel. I'm just the guy behind it in the driver's seat. And we can end up saying, well, God wanted that to happen, or God is testing me, when in reality, we dropped the ball. Regardless of our trust in the Lord, we each possess our own free will that allows us to follow him or not. And in the end, we are still the one behind the wheel of our lives. Others may say that God is like the GPS. He gives the instructions, but it is up to us to follow him on what it is that he's saying to do. And again, it's kind of a nifty illustration, but I feel that it diminishes God's eternal salvation. First of all, God is much bigger than a little tool that hangs off my windshield, right? And a GPS has to be updated sporadically. God doesn't need updated. God never changes. He's the same today. He's the same last year. He's the same each and every day. And as they start to find these archaeological bits of evidence for the Bible, they see that the words we have in our book haven't changed in thousands of years because our God doesn't change. His promises don't change. And what he offers doesn't change. God is the same day after year and generation, all the way back to the creation of earth. And unlike my GPS, God's already aware of what's happening around us. He knows what will happen, and he doesn't need reminded what it is that our path looks like. I'm going to get in trouble for this one, but as far as an illustration for driving a car and our trust in God, I believe our relationship should be more like that we have with our wife. Because I love my wife, and I trust my wife. I believe in the character of my wife and on the information that she's giving me. And if you think it's some sort of exaggeration, for 13 years I told her she's my GPS. But there's that relationship there. Amanda is sitting next to me. Amanda's holding my hand as we go down the same road together, not alone. And she's in that car with me. God's not just watching us from the clouds, right, as we make our moves. He's not just giving us empty directions with no real concern for the bearing. A GPS has no feelings, and if it did, it should apologize for all the times that I ended up in the wrong spot. God is right next to us in our life. He does not want relegated to backseat driver. He wants to be the one giving us direction. He wants to be the one sitting next to us, holding our hands and letting us know that he cares. And he's prepared to guide us through life if we're willing to open the car door and allow him in. Walter permits me to carry him because he trusts that I am taking him somewhere warmer or somewhere better. He trusts that the place I'm taking him to is safe. And our trust in the Lord should be similar because we know our God is a good God. And we know that our God is a loving God. Turn quickly to Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. And you have to be really quick because I actually wrote it down on here so I can get to it a lot faster. Matthew 7, verse 7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. I kind of ad-libbed a little bit here. Wayne, if Wrigley or Walter asked for bread, would you give him a stone? If he asked for fish, would you give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? God is a good Father. He knows not just what we want, he knows what we need. He knows what is best for us. And he knows where that path is supposed to lead. Somewhere we can't even see right now because we're back here on the path. He can see through the trees and through the twists and turns and knows where it is that he's taking us. Maybe there should be less questioning God and a little bit more trust. When I pick Walter up in the morning, he rests. Like I said, he falls back to sleep in my arms. And it's amazing to me how much trust he has. Not only that he allows me to take him anywhere and he just falls asleep, but that he falls asleep in my arms before he even sees where that destination is. He trusts me to carry him to the point that I take complete control while he falls asleep. I take him anywhere, and he goes with me. And I'm not positive how I would react in the same situation. If I woke up and someone was carrying me and I didn't anticipate that, I don't think I would fall back asleep. However, our relationship with God, our trust that lies in him, should be just as strong as that of a 4-year-old. I'm not much of a morning person. As a teacher, most of my first-hour classes through the years have kind of learned that they don't really ask questions until my coffee cup is either refilled or empty. But I have some really vivid mornings throughout my life that I'd like to talk about. When I was stationed in Washington back in 2004 and 2005, I remember driving into work at horrible times of day. And I would have to drive this long serpentine road all the way to the base. They didn't cut down trees for the roads in Washington State anywhere. Instead, the roads wind through all of these big trees to get to where you're going. And I would go down this road to get to the submarine, and as it came in and out of the forest with massive trees on either side, I remember there was this perfect spot on the drive where I'd get up near the top, and there would be this giant clearing, and you could look out and see the water beneath you and all of the nature surrounding it. Off in the distance would be Mount Rainier, and on some days, if I had the timing just right, I would see the rays of sun peek up through the skyline right around the mountain on my way to work. And it was breathtaking to see all that God had created right there in front of us as I went on to my menial tasks in life. Or there was a time our submarine pulled into Hawaii. I was fortunate enough, though I didn't say that word back then, to stand watch for 12 hours. I got up there at about 11 o'clock at night and went all the way up till lunch that day. And as the night started, all I could see were clouds off in the distance. And then there were some stars that you could kind of make out. And since there were no city lights anywhere, we were out in the middle of the ocean, no land anywhere in sight. You could see every star in the horizon. Eventually, you could start to see these lights start to flicker on the islands. And it was like it all starting to kind of wake up. And as I stood up there long enough, the sun started to poke up. And you could see, again, like God creating it right in front of you, from vast nothingness in the middle of the ocean to land and buildings and humans and everyone going about their lives. And my breath was taken away. And now I get to school normally about an hour before my students. And for some reason, I find that the school is a lot quieter at that time of day. And I look out the window, and I can stand in awe of what I see. And it relaxes me, it soothes me to sit there and just look out the window and see the sunrise over this cornfield with a little church in the corner. The sky fills with reds and blues and yellows, purples, and the beginnings of clouds start to appear. And the good news is that God, who put all of those in place, who created and hung each star that we get to see now, who formed those clouds, is the same God who fashioned me to be able to see them and observe them and put me in that spot to see it that morning. God, who created the entire universe, is bigger than each and every one of us, and much bigger than any problem that we're going to come across today or this week or in our lives. He's watching over us on a daily basis. And if that's not enough to ease your mind, maybe you should wake up a little bit earlier and enjoy a cup of coffee as you look out the window. Because he's more than capable of getting us to our destination. He's strong enough to carry us to where we're going and to prepare us for what we have in store for us. Our trust in God should be such that if He were to physically pick us up and carry us, we could lay our head on His shoulder and find rest. I'm reminded of what God told Joshua as Joshua entered a new chapter in their life, a new adventure. He was inheriting everything that had been done before him, and he got to close it out. He had missions, and he was preparing to enter this new land, and all these obstacles, all these fears, all these trials laid in front of him. And it was all unknown. And it makes all of those fears that I have right now kind of seem a little trivial. And as Joshua embarked on this new chapter, God told him something. God has told many the same thing throughout the Bible. And it's a verse that I've held in my heart for many years. Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified or discouraged, for the Lord thy God is with you wherever you may go. Put some emphasis on those final words. God is with you wherever you may go. He will never, ever leave you. The Lord your God is with you wherever you go this week, or this month, or the rest of the year, or the new school year as we enter it. Walter also trusts that I'm strong enough to hold his weight. And as I said, at 30-some pounds, it's not really impressive. And it's not a great feat of strength, but to him, it's everything. And one of my favorite parts of attending a Brethren church is our tradition, the one that I just saw today, where we share in these praises together, and we share in our prayer requests together. And I've been to a lot of churches around the country, and this is a Brethren church thing. If you go to other denominations, you're probably not going to have that same time during your weekly gathering to share in prayer requests and praises. And it's wildly biblical. If you look at Apostle Paul in the book of Acts, they do the same thing at the beginning of the church that we still do now, 2,000 years later. He repeatedly tells the early church that they should pray for each other. And then he shares with them, Paul does, reports of how prayer requests have been answered and how because you've prayed for this, X, Y, and Z have happened. And he gets to share these responses with the church like we do each week. And you can find this in many of his epistles, showing us just how important it was then and how important it is today to share in those requests. 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 through 5 speak directly to this. The church of Corinth must have been really special because Paul wrote them twice. One of them was a really nice letter. The other not so much. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all of our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. No message is really complete until you mention Christ, right? We need to show that it all centers back on Christ, the sacrifice he made, where he stands in our lives. We know God is capable of carrying our weight. It's great that we share each other concerns, that each of us can join in that prayer together throughout the week, remembering those that we go to church with. But I think it's just as great when prayer is answered, and we get to share that as well. Once in a while, I'll try to call a friend on the phone, and they won't answer, right? Or you send a letter or an email probably today to someone you care about, and I don't really get that response. Recently, I've texted a friend of mine, someone I've known for a few years that I've worked together with, and despite our friendship, he never responded to my text message. And our culture today demands instant gratification, right? I get impatient sitting at the ATM because my money is supposed to be out already. Or going through the drive-thru, why am I waiting? Our culture today says we should get that satisfaction immediately. We shouldn't have to wait. And you start to wonder about your friendship. Why hasn't he responded yet? And if you call a few times and someone doesn't answer, and sometimes you call several people in a row and none of them answer, and it's the worst. And you start to wonder if your relationships aren't what you thought they were, if you've done something wrong or lost that friendship. And that same thing happens when you don't respond to an email or text. I wonder what's going on. Why don't they like me anymore? And it seems silly in retrospect because I know that we're all adults and we've got lives and we're busy, and a text message goes off on your phone and you look at it, and by the time your shift ends at work, you forgot, right? And that's why I see so much value in what we do as a church. We pray together. We remind each other of what's going on in our lives, and then we remind each other of when God has answered those prayers. I'm going to end by going all the way back to Psalm 37. It was written by David, and some tradition has this being written toward the end of David's life, kind of the final stages. And so this could be taken kind of as sage advice from an elderly man who'd considered everything as he'd made his walk with God, a man who'd been carried through many trials, who'd laid his head on God's shoulder hundreds of times up to this point, an elderly man who'd witnessed God carrying the weight of all of those troubles through his life. Psalm 37, 5 through 8. Commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it only leads to evil. May we take these words to heart. May they ease our mind as we enjoy our final weeks of summer together. Hopefully we can commit to the Lord. Trust in him who we see in the sunrise. Be still and patient with him, and fret a lot less. Too often we look ahead, and when we see the challenges and the obstacles, we look with gloom and worry and sadness, and we think too much, or maybe not enough. Our word for think actually comes from an old German word. Hopefully no one speaks German because I'm going to butcher this. Thankas means to think or feel. And if I pronounced it right, then throughout centuries and changing language, it turned into two different words that we still use today in English. It turned into think and thank. This week, we will be forced to think about things outside of our control, stressing about day-to-day obligations. Maybe we can do the other half of that as well and be thankful for all the blessings we still see, that God is bigger than all of this, and that he stands next to us. Hopefully remember these promises from God. My sincere hope is we can all be more like a toddler this week with his Father. Despite all the questions that lie ahead, may we trust in God, take rest in God, allow him to carry our burdens, and always think of something we can be thankful for. Please pray. Lord, may we learn to trust you more. May we trust you with our entire heart, our being, grow to understand your ways and learn on our understanding less. Develop a deeper belief in your character, strength, and truth. God, we ask that you help us as we learn to rest on your shoulder, begin to understand that you're more than capable of carrying us, and may these concerns subside as we look to you, sitting next to us on this trip through a new year. May that comfort us. Thank you for all that you are, each sunrise, the stars you hung, the clouds you designed, and the compassion you have for us, your children. Amen.
And what do we do with that? What do we think as we think through things that we have to be thankful for? What do we choose to be thankful? Do we, like our